It's funny, back in the day, I was a first lieutenant and I'd gotten into a fist fight with a guy who was a captain. A friend said, hey, you need to get out of the squadron. Go to 152 out in Okinawa. Get away from this guy. By the time I was in transit and I got to Okinawa, I was already kicked out of the squadron and moved into a desk job. Maybe this person and the XO were friends. I kind of got the raw deal. You have some people that you just sit there and go, that guy really screwed me. I got out of the Marine Corps and was hired. I was the second C-130 guy in the entire fleet to get hired at American 2 years later, maybe. I had a 1929 Fleet biplane. We're sitting there drinking a beer in the lounge chair when my wife pulls up, and I look at her get out of the car. I look at the airplane. I go, material things aside, life is pretty good. And then all of a sudden I'm going, and I'm at my dream job with dream toys, dream woman. How did I get here? I never got screwed. That was all in place for me to be in the right place at the right time.
Welcome to Make the Donuts. I'm your host, Eric Sabiston. I'm a best-selling author, a dual-rated airline pilot, and a career counselor. I've helped over 8,000 people make the jump to the airlines. Now, I'm interviewing successful people from a variety of professions around the world. It's time to learn their secrets for success. Make the Donuts starts now. Welcome to the first episode of Make the Donuts. I'm your host, Eric Sabiston, and today I start this whole thing off the right way, bringing my big brother, my mentor, the best hair in Texas, Mitch, Taco Bell, right in the studio. Great to have you, brother.
Man, I tell you what, this is cool. You know, after all these years, you're finally getting on the podcast kick, and I'm the first guest. So, you know, pretty awesome, man. What, 8 years ago, we sat and had lunch at Herrera's, and you went out on a little quest and actually started the whole scum deal. And I'm wearing my R-Tag shirt that I got, the Hawaiian shirt, which actually I've lost so much weight now. I've lost 45 pounds.
You've lost a lot of weight, man.
Yeah, dude, I got fat, man. I don't have any excuses. I shouldn't even be bragging about the weight loss because I should have never have gained it in the first place.
There are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of veterans who are on their way to a commercial airline career or perhaps in one because of this guy. He gives me all the credit, but it all goes to him. Back in the day in the Iraq War, Taco, Mitch Bell here, he was overseas with Army pilots, and he saw the helicopter pilots, and he said, these guys are okay. And he was one of the biggest initial advocates to letting them get into the airlines through a program called the RTP at Envoy, which stands for Rotor Transition Program. And what, 8 years ago? 8 years ago, Taco?
No, it was 8 years ago was when you and I met at
Right.
the Hilo Expo, but it was the RTP deal. I must have been up at headquarters Marine Corps. I'd gone to a Frontiers of Flight charity event with all the Apollo astronauts. It was a really cool deal, and I was a plus one for Tim Rayner, Shine. He's a retired Marine, '06. And Shine called me up and said, hey, man, you want to be my plus one? Put on your evening dress. So I did. And I took two propellers from Iraq off of UAVs, off the Pioneers, and I had all the Apollo dudes autograph the propellers. As I was sitting there talking to them, I went back and I was at the table, and it was Fred Cleveland was the COO for American Eagle back then. So it wasn't even Envoy yet. And we were talking about different things, and one of the CH-46 pilots from TQ Iraq, from the lily pad, we call it the lily pad there, I had gotten him rushed into my C-130 squadron after HMX. So I was talking to Fred, and I said, you're missing out on an entire pool of highly qualified aviators. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, helicopter guys. And he was like, oh, I don't know about helicopter guys, blah, blah, blah. And I go, no, you don't understand. Instrument rated, highly capable folks that have been getting shot at in the war, having to make life and death snap second decisions in an aircraft. So I took one of those guys and I got him upgraded into the C-130 at my reserve unit. You can't tell me that you can't teach a guy like that how to fly your little jets, because he has it. He's flying C-130s. He's doing great. And he goes, really? I never even thought about that. And I go, dude, you've got Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard guys, right? Then you got Air Force helicopter pilots, and you've got an entire country full of Army helicopter pilots. Haven't you ever read Huey or Chicken Hawk? And he's like, no. And I go, you really need to. incredible. If you've never flown a helicopter, which I have 3 times, flying straight and level is like flying fixed wing. Coming into hover, now that's a different story.
Well, I mean, we owe you a debt of gratitude we'll never be able to repay. And by the way, if you haven't read Chicken Hawk by Robert Mason, you need to. It's maybe the best helicopter book out there, period. And Taco, you got to interview him as well, didn't
I
you?
did.
Yeah.
I interviewed, it was Robert Mason, his wife, a friend of mine. This podcast is only 200 some shows that I have, Tall Tales with Taco Bell. But if you go back, it is probably episode 7 or 8. And it, to this day, is still one of the top rated podcasts that I have.
Well, you made it really easy for all of us to get to the airlines. I mean, it's inarguable the impact you had on so many veterans, which it not only just changed their lives, it changed their home lives. It repaired marriages and estranged kids. I mean, it brought them back together in ways that you can't even really comprehend right now. It's that I always say this. It's that God point, like you say, that it's a wonderful life moment. No man knows how many people his life touches until he's gone, and you may not even figure that out until we've all been buried and in the ground. But your own path was not as straightforward. Tell us a little bit about how you, well, first of all, how you became a Marine Corps aviator, and then how you got hired by the airlines.
I mean, how long do we have?
We got about 30 minutes or so. So
Yeah, real quick. First airplane ride was on American Airlines on a 7-2 shorty. I got to sit in the cockpit flight deck for the entire flight. Kicked me out right before we landed in Knoxville. So we went from DCA to Knoxville, Tennessee. My aunt was a gate agent.
how old were you again?
6. 6 years old. It was 1971. I was almost right before my 7th birthday. So as a young kid, being able to do this, I wish we could do this for kids. And pre 9/11, I actually used to stand, I would go back and talk to the kids because I was a flight engineer. I would go back and get all the kids and tell them, "You want to see inside the cockpit?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I go, "Follow me up to the front." And so they would come up to the front and I would have them all gathered where you would enter the airplane right there by the galley. And I would say, you can't go in, but if the door is open and I happen to be talking to the flight attendant, you can look around me and check it out. Well, the pilots up there, they didn't even know I was giving tours. I would open the door up and the kids were all standing there and I'm standing inside the door and just answering questions and letting all the kids, come up and look. I think little things like that really can spark an inspiration in somebody. And we don't do that well enough nowadays. Top Gun Maverick did a great job, I thought, of being more accurate and more storyline accurate and precision flying and things like that to kind of maybe entice kids. Back in the day, it was that enticed me. I mean, think about this. When you're 7 years old and you look up at a cloud and you're laying on the ground, you know that thunderstorms rains on you and you're just sitting there staring at a cloud thinking, how can a cloud be so full of water and float? Those are kind of things that you think about. And then my uncle would take me flying in his Cherokee 140. He was a Navy F-14 Rio at the time over in Oceana. And I go, "Hey, I want to go fly through a cloud." And he goes, "Well, we're really not allowed to." And I go, "But I want to feel what a cloud feels like. Stick my hand out the window." So he goes, "Okay." So I remember him looking around like, any airplanes around. And he dives into this big puffy cumulus deal, typical summertime, just a little cumulus puff. And I open the swing window and stick my hand out and we fly through the cloud and the airplane windshield's all wet. My hand's wet. I'm like, "It's wet." And he goes, "Yeah, clouds are wet." I'm like, wow, then how do they float? I never figured that one out. But, as a kid. But now that kind of sparked the whole thing. So what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an airline pilot. Well, how do you become an airline pilot? Back in the day in the 70s, we had career day. They had a little book that you'd open up and say, "Hey, I want to be an airline pilot." And a little paragraph about that big and says, "Airline pilots for major airlines have a 4-year degree and either come from the military or aviation specialty schools. And they make a salary of $150,000 a year or something like that." We'd moved from Virginia Beach to Washington, D.C. In the late 70s, 78. And I would take the subway from my house in Arlington down to the airport, National Airport, and I would walk through security. There was some homeless dude sitting there looking at a magnometer, I guess. And I would get through, and then I would go to the restaurant there at Washington Reagan. It was National Airport back then, at the main building. And at the restaurant, I would wait for a crew to come in, and they would be captain, FO, and flight engineer. And I'd walk up to the guys. I had my little school book, with notes. And I'd say, "Excuse me, sir, my name's Mitchell Bell. I'm a seventh grader at Swanson Junior High. I was wondering if I could interview you all about being airline pilots." And they're like, "Yeah, sure, kid, grab a seat." And they hadn't ordered yet. It was always good for a hamburger. Captain be like, "Hey, kid, you want a hamburger?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Fries, sure. Coke, yeah, that's great." So I would go down, spend all day talking to people, chase flight attendants around for the wings. I collected all the little
Oh yeah,
wings,
yeah.
and I built my biography. I have to, go to high school, go to college, and I realized I needed to join the military. My whole family is military, but my parents, middle class, Navy lieutenant commander. We didn't have the money for me to go to a school like Embry-Riddle, aviation specialty school. So that's what I did. I joined the Marines at 19, got a guaranteed flight contract, commissioned in 88, went to the basic school for 6 months, and then down to Pensacola, then over to Corpus, got my wings, selected C-130s. And that was a crazy thing. When I selected, they gave you three choices. They gave you props, jets, or helos. And there were 15 of us. There was one jet slot, one prop slot, and the rest of them were a helicopter. So no matter what you wanted, then it was all on your preference, right? So the number one guy, Andy, put down jet, jet, jet. He got actual jets. Number two guy, and I can't remember his name, he wanted to be a Cobra guy, and he put helo, 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 actual helo. I was number three, and I put jet or prop jet helo, and I got props. So no matter what anybody else put, they all got helos. And I always thought, man, after flying a helicopter, I used to go take maintenance flights down at Corpus at the Army Depot. I got to work there for a few months. So I knew the guys, and the Marines would let me go flying with them. The Army guys would take me up in the UEs. It was cool, but it wasn't easy. I always had a massive respect for helicopter guys. And then, flew those Cherry Point, Okinawa, did some time in the reserves here, went to Iraq as I said, the air boss, went to Afghanistan on a ground tour, working with the Afghan National Police. So then my 10 years active duty in 98, I got off active duty, and I was hired the day I got out. You were talking about God points. So it's funny, back in the day, I was a first lieutenant, and I'd gotten into a fist fight with a guy who was a captain, and he didn't appreciate it. Kind of beat the crap out of him, I think. And it was kind of one of those things. My career was sort of soiled from that point on at the squadron. This guy, I always felt, was rightfully still. And a friend who's a mentor and friend to this day said, "Hey, you need to get out of the squadron. Go to 152 out in Okinawa. Get away from this guy, because I think he's going to really stifle your career in terms of upgrading to aircraft commander and things like that." So I did, and I went over there. But by the time I was in transit and I got to Okinawa, I was already kicked out of the squadron and moved into a desk job at Marine Wing Support Group 17, which at the time I always felt was maybe this person and the XO were friends, and I kind of got the raw deal. I always felt that way, right?
Mm.
But, then as you progress, I was a 1 year tour, but I had extended to 2 years so that I could go back to the squadron, fly, and upgrade was my goal. But that never happened, and I ended up reverting back to a 1 year tour, and the monitor, who was a friend of mine, got me out of Okinawa and got me on recruiting duty, because I was just kind of angry at the whole C-130 side of things in the fleet. And it was just a personality conflict between myself and the XO and then one of his minions. So I opted to leave, and I told him I'd rather be an embassy pilot in Zimbabwe than to be in the fleet with like these two guys. You have those people that you'll run into, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes you get through no problem. Sometimes you have some people that you just sit there and go, that guy really screwed me. Yeah, I may have screwed myself with some of the things I said. So I have culpability as well. But when you fast forward, I got out of the Marine Corps and was hired, and I was the second C-130 guy in the entire fleet to get hired at American because they just opened up the floodgates. About a year and a half, 2 years later, maybe, Teresa pulled up in my red 911. I was a single guy with all the toys. I had a 1929 Fleet biplane. We're sitting there drinking a beer in the lounge chair when my wife pulls up, and I look at her get out of the car. I look at the car. I look at the airplane. I go, material things aside, life is pretty good. And then all of a sudden I'm going, and I'm at my dream job with dream toys, dream woman. How did I get here? It's like an epiphany that had that incident not happened in 1991, and then 2 years later I hadn't opted to go to Okinawa and then Okinawa to recruiting duty, I would not have met my buddy Reb. I wouldn't have gotten my dream job. I probably would have gotten hired, but years, maybe 2 years later. I got hired. I was at the right place at the right time on recruiting duty. I got hired here, and then I'm sitting here looking at it going, I never got screwed. That was all in place for me to be in the right place at the right time.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I truly believe in God points, and that particular person that I joke about, beating the crap out of him, we're friends.
Are you really? That's great.
So what I'm trying to say to you guys out there is, if you're going through life, we always have the magenta line on our ND or nav display, and sometimes you've got to deviate around thunderstorms and get around them, but you always manage to get back on your magenta line to get to your destination.
Wow, I
If
like
you
that.
can do that in life, although you may feel like because of X, Y, Z, I went this way, this way, this way, all of a sudden you find yourself back here. And the only reason you're there is because there's a higher power up there that's directing your life and what happens. So I truly believe that. And we are blessed. We are extremely blessed, especially you and I, to
Oh,
have
uh,
gone through all the stuff we've done. So praise God. I'll say that out loud right now.
amen. That'll preach right there. Tony made a comment recently this week. My other guest that recorded with us, that you need to validate your own parking ticket. Putting in the work. And I thought that was a really good quote. You talk to a lot of veterans. You talk to a lot of pilots in the military and folks who are not pilots. But for those guys and gals watching right now who are commissioned officers, when they ask me questions about this stuff, I send them to you. You're kind of the expert on a lot of this stuff, but for that one, I consider you like the number one expert, really. When you talk to a young lieutenant, captain, ensign, whatever, what advice do you give them specifically about commissioned folks that's different from warrant officers, enlisted service members? What is unique to their progression, their transition from the military, continuing their career part-time, any kind of, command considerations? Because we can cover the transition and the funding and the training, but there's probably some proclivities about that. I've heard the term castling. I don't know what that is. Things like that are specific to commissioned officers that they should think of.
Hey everybody, I want to take a quick second to thank my friends at Phantom Products for believing in Make the Donuts, sponsoring this first season. They're powering us, and on top of that, they've powered some amazing lighting applications. Since 1943, they've been providing lighting to the military. They used to light the shipping lanes for military transports during World War II. They provided lights to the New York Police Department, the New York Fire Department, and first responders all over this country. They're family owned, they're American made. When I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, I was using this Phantom TLS, and it's an awesome light. It's got covert, secure, white, it's got cyan, it's got infrared, it's got these built-in flash patterns if you need it. In a roundabout way, without this light, there's some people in this world that probably wouldn't be here. So I want to thank Phantom Products again for believing in the show, for sponsoring us, and for the great stuff you guys make. Check out the website. We'll drop it down in the show notes. And again, Phantom Products, thanks for helping us make the donuts.
Has changed over the years in terms of your retirement. I mean, when I got out in 98, you had the taps. I remember going to taps, and it was just 2 days of fire hose, jam this stuff down your throat, and all you're thinking about is, dude, I got a job. I want to get out of here. I just signed my thing so I can leave. Sign my little chit saying I attended your TAPS class. So I didn't pay attention to a lot of it. Let's just say this. When you're sitting there and the Lance Corporal at S1 goes, "Sir, do you want to retain your commission or resign your commission.
Okay.
Well, what does that mean? And the guy goes, well, you either keep your commission or you resign it. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to resign my commission. I'll never get it back, right? I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Nobody explained it to me. And so I said, no, I'll keep my commission. Okay, great. So a little check in the block. Well, what that is, let's say you want a break, and after 2 or 3 years, you decide, you know what? I really miss being with all the folks. I miss the circus. I miss the clowns. I want to get back into the circus. Well, if you go back in, your time stopped when you resigned your commission, and then your time picks back up 3 years later when you get back in. So what happens that nobody really talks about is, as a commissioned officer under Title 10, you only have 20 years of commissioned service up to major. So that's why on active duty, you could get to the rank of major, and then after major, you had to make a lieutenant colonel. If you didn't make a lieutenant colonel and got passed, at 20 years, you had to retire. Well, it's the same in the reserves as well. But what they don't tell you, you have the 20-year mark total for commissioned service unless you get promoted. But let's say that you have a 3-year break somewhere in there and you didn't resign your commission, your clock was still ticking for that total 20 years. And at that point, all of a sudden you'll get to the 17-year mark of satisfactory years in service, but you hit the total 20-year commissioned service limitation. And the Marine Corps, Navy, whoever, they'll kick you out.
Wow, that is huge.
Yeah, you can apply for continuation to stay in, but they can, if they're fat on people and they're trying to cut back, they just go, yeah, no, thanks, man, Eric, appreciate it, but no, you're done. And that happened to one of my majors. And it's funny because I really didn't understand that, so I didn't know it until one of my majors who worked for me freaked out, called me up and said, sir, I just got this certified letter from the Marine Corps. It said, thank you very much for playing in the Marine Corps Reserves, but you are now out of the Marine Corps. Don't pass go. Don't get $200. You're out. And I'm like, wait, take a picture of it and send it to me. So he sends it to me, and I'm looking at it. And I'm like, what is this? And it took some research to find out he'd hit that 20-year mark, but it turns out he had 3 years unsat years. And in the reserves, you got a pulse, that's 15 points. And you need 45 points to have a sat year, I think. So 45 points. Well, let's see, how can you get 45 points? You could do coloring books for soldiers, coloring books for sailors, coloring book for Marines, and you get points for those. Yeah, and you could build up your points that way. You don't get paid, you don't get TRICARE or any of that, but you get the points towards your satisfactory year. Okay, if you want to take a break for a couple years, resign your commission if you're a commissioned officer. That way, when you get back in, your total clock restarts at that point that you get back in.
Where's the break line? If I want to stay in, but not full-time. If I want to move in the Army, we call it Compo 1, 2, and 3, active duty, reserve, guard. Where's the break-even point? Where's the point in your career numerically where you'd say, okay, if you want to get out and go into guard and reserves, this would be the point to do it? Or is there even a point? 6, 8 years active duty, maybe 10, maybe 12. Where would you say, just stay in and finish your active duty retirement versus get out and stay in the guard and reserve? And a follow-on question to that is, if you go into guard and reserve, would you just stay as long as you can, or would you just do your 20 and then?
Yeah, when it stops being fun.
Well, that's a good answer. Yeah.
I would say if you were looking at a career outside of the military in the airlines, and you have 2 years to go, it doesn't make sense to get out with your family and lose all the benefits and whatnot in the retirement.
What about today's environment? You got 5 years to go. Would you still say stay in?
No, I'd get out.
Okay.
All right, because you have to balance seniority projections and seniority numbers, and if folks don't understand, while you're in the military, you've got kind of your seniority within your rank, right, and within your MOS and within the, all those little factors that come in for promotion, and your promotion's based off your merit and your ability. In the airlines, your promotion to captain is nothing more than a seniority number. And the seniority number is when you get hired. So they give you a number, and your seniority number changes. In our case, it changes every July, and it goes goes to the, moves up. The number of guys who retire, bingo, that's your number progressing slowly.
Right.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with how well you fly the jet. As a matter of fact, if you're listening to my voice and you get hired here at your dream airline somewhere, please do me a favor. If you have issues in training, like you were a CFI to a regional to a low cost carrier, and then you get hired and you have issues when you're in initial training, at 18 months when you can thump your chest and go, I can hold captain, please don't upgrade. Just sit back, relax, enjoy your seniority, and experience everything you can as an FO and suck all the information out from the guys and girls in the left seat before you come over and make that jump.
I love hearing that, Taco. Thank you. So everybody seems to be in a rush to get to the left seat, and everybody has their own reasons, and some of them are completely valid. But do you see a shift in the airlines? Do you see a shift in the airlines right now in people jumping to the left seat versus the way it was when you started?
When I was hired, they told us it would be 5 years. We would upgrade in 5 years. But what they didn't tell us, and what we couldn't foresee, of course, back in '98 was 2001, 9/11. We couldn't see bankruptcy. We could not forecast the age of pilots going to 65, which stagnated an entire generation of folks like myself. It was 16 years before I could upgrade to captain, before I even had the opportunity. But what does that mean? Great, you go to captain, which I was ready for after 5 years, right? God, I was just brain dead. It meant I would have to commute to Miami, live in a crash pad with 12 other folks, and then be on reserve and junior captain. Then, like my buddy who did that, and he's one number junior to me, he went to Miami for 2 years, and then he went to LA for a year and a half, and then he finally got back to Dallas. By the time he got back to Dallas, I had met you. I was an FO on the 787, and I called him up and said, I took my mom and dad on a ferry flight, and they sat in a jump seat right behind me. Flew from Dallas to Chicago and Chicago back to Dallas on 2 different airplanes, moving empty airplanes. I got permission by the chief pilot, brought my parents through security, got them on the airplane. They sat behind me and got to see what their son does. And the captain, really cool, goes, hey, you want both landings? I'm like, yeah. So my parents got to see.
That is a cool captain.
Yeah, he was a great captain. He got to see, my parents saw me land the airplane twice in the jump seat behind me on a 787. Now, can you still do that? If you get permission, yeah, you could do that. It's kind of a cool perk. The other thing was my dad goes, son, this is great and all, but I'd like to go fly with my son, the captain. And I'm like, golly, I laid awake at night thinking about that. My dad's over 80 and, man, I should upgrade. Because I would have ridden out the rest of my career, honestly, Eric, as a 7.8 FO until I could upgrade left seat 7.8. So I put in my bid and I upgraded, and that was 8 years ago. You think my dad's flown with me once?
No.
Once? Hey, Dad, man, I got this empty flight to El Paso. You want to go? No, it's okay, son. I'm like, I thought you wanted to fly with me, your son, the captain. He goes, oh, no. I've flown with you. I just only said that so that your lazy butt would upgrade out of that 7.8. You were just going stagnant.
Let me ask you this. Today, things have changed. We understand that, Boeing's had some problems with, aircraft deliveries. But if a young veteran asks you, Taco, is the airline industry still a good career move? Am I too late for the party? Should I even try for this? Because I get that all the time. People think that because the heydays of the big dig being gone, that it's no longer a smart move. But what's your opinion? What would you tell them?
I think we're still, you know better than I, the numbers. What are we still retiring 700-800 guys a year for the next unforeseeable future? I mean, I retire in 5 years. You can have my seat. 5 years, dude. I'll be 200 number, I think 260 in the company when I retire.
Wow.
And that's only 5 years away, which, as we just talked about, 8 years to retire out of the Marine Corps. God, 8 years, That was 20 years ago I was in Iraq, and that was 10 years ago I retired from the military. So it goes by really quick. No, I don't think it's too late. I remember flying with the guy on the 727. The captain was the most senior captain international 72 in Dallas, which Dallas was a very senior base. And the FO was the number one FO in the base. So I asked him, I go, you could be a F-100 captain right now. How come you haven't upgraded? And he looked at me and he goes, Mitch, two things you're going to learn. You're either chasing money or you're chasing lifestyle. I make enough money as a senior FO and I pick up an extra trip that I'm making a little bit less than a junior captain who's sitting on reserve in an apartment at some New York or somewhere I don't want to be. And I live at home. I drive to the airport every day and I've got great seniority. I only put in, 3 bids a month, five bids a month, and I get my top three because I got to fight the other dudes on the weekends, whatever weekends they want off. He goes, you'll learn seniority is everything for your vacation, for your bidding, for the aircraft. And depending on what airplane you get, like if I go FO 767, MD-11, DC-10, which we had at the time, my seniority would drop. I would be junior. I would make more money-wise, but I would be junior. And now my lifestyle has gone down the drain. So you've got to find that happy medium. You find that perfect lifestyle medium where you've got the balance of seniority and you're making enough money. As a senior FO, you're getting your bids. You get the weekends off. Your junior buddy captain has to commute to Miami or New York or wherever, and they make more money. Yes. They have a lot more responsibility. Yes. But then again, how's their lifestyle? And if you're a person that's into lifestyle, let's say maybe you have a part-time job, which this job allows you to have, your lifestyle's through the roof and you're making great money. So if you're on the tail end of the seniority boom, hiring in 7 years from now, 8 years from now, I don't even know the number where we keep losing 800 a year. I mean, I went through where we only retired 20 guys a year. That was miserable. Every year my seniority number just moved. And then, of course, we bought somebody and then we would merge all the numbers and my seniority would drop again, a couple thousand numbers. It was miserable. Where my book is, I was 9250 when I got hired, and now I'm 2,500 out of 16,000. And then my seniority just rapidly explodes these next couple years to where I'll be 260, 250, 260, I think, when I retire. And like the last year, I could hold 787 out of Philly, if I was on the line. So yeah, it's nice being the old guy and getting the seniority, but it's gone by fast. So no, the long answer is if you've got 5 years left in the military, I definitely would finish it up in the reserves because you could stay in the reserves as long as you make the rank as a commissioned officer. As long as you make lieutenant colonel, you could stay in for 28 years commission time, another 8 years.
You get the benefits and you have the insurance and they have the health care. Wait, health care costs are crazy.
Yeah. So we're going to have, I know a lot of people that just use the TRICARE for life, but then again, I learned while I was deployed that I did American as my primary and I did TRICARE as my secondary. So we never paid out of pocket for anything. If my kids all had knee surgeries when they were growing up, we didn't pay a dime. Anything crazy, didn't pay a dime. So I highly recommend. And if you're a reservist, especially, I don't know how the Army does it, but in the Marine Corps and Navy, you have IMA jobs, individual mobilized augmentee. I looked at, you could pick up a 6-week tour in Hawaii to be on a staff with MAR 4-pack and do planning exercises, and you're just a staff puke in there doing, building PowerPoints or whatever. Man, you're on active duty for like 8 weeks. Your entire year, 2 months, is in Hawaii. Your entire year, SAT year, is done, and you don't have to do any other reserve work the rest of the time. What a great gig! And oh, by the way, your airline has to let you go because you SARA. So you provide a set of orders and you disappear for 2 months.
Fly the family out to Hawaii and they can meet you out there.
Yeah, and the family comes out and spends 2 months in Hawaii during the summer. I didn't realize there are all these opportunities available. You could go, I mean, we had the exercises like DD display determination or the deal over in Egypt or Cobra Gold in Thailand. You can volunteer as a reservist to be on a staff somewhere, go fly over and do, 6 weeks with those folks.
Oh yeah,
And
I
you
did
just,
full Eagle in Moojuk
that's
with the
it.
Marine Corps when I was in the Navy.
You do that for 6 weeks, your entire reserve obligation is completed and you do nothing else for the rest of the year. Do that for your entire, you got 7 years left. Do that and enjoy yourself.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is basically this: if you've got 5 years, get in the Guard. If you got 2 years, stay in. If you get out, resign your commission, right?
Well, only if you want to break.
If you want to break, that way you don't hinder yourself from promotions down the road. Don't be in a rush to upgrade necessarily, and because quality of life is great. I mean, I don't know when or if I'm even going to upgrade. Last month I bid 5 trips, all super easy trips, late shows, double overnights, and I got every single one. They're all my first choice. Every week in April is 5 weeks. I got the number one choice every single week, and I'm only in the top 25%. So that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Seniority is everything. You can thump your
And
chest and go,
seniority is everything. Yeah.
I'm a captain. I'm a captain. I'm a captain. Well, that's great, you know, until you're a senior captain like me. And then you could have the days off you want and the vacation when you want. Otherwise, you're back at the junior pond scum. You're in a big ocean and you're the junior pond scum out there trying to survive. And then you get people going, man, this really sucks.
Let me ask you some other rapid fire ones. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no, ooh, rah, or ooh, no. I don't know on these. Events. Should pilot candidates go to as many events as they can or just one a year or what?
All of them, all of them that you can, because they actually record all of that.
Okay. How about this prep service for major airline interviews? Do you recommend it?
Highly recommend. Can I
Okay.
say who I recommend?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I like Spitfire.
Spitfire Elite Consulting. Okay. In today's environment, regional, upgrade as a captain, or ultra low cost carrier as soon as you can.
The latest I've heard is they want 500 hours PIC 121 time. So if you make it to a low cost carrier and you're stuck as an FO, now they're looking for 500 hours PIC. You know why? Because they hired somebody who was a CFI one day, went to Envoy, realized the flow sucked, got hired at Spirit, and then went from Spirit and got hired as a 400-hour FO to American. They had issues in training because the Airbus is not the same as, say, the 73, or the 73 is not the same as what they did on the Airbus. They don't have that experience behind them to open up the kit bag and go, I remember this happened to me when I was a captain, or PIC at all.
They can't validate their own parking ticket.
No, they can't.
Fractional, corporate, charter, ACMI versus regional. You could fly a bigger jet at, say, Atlas, or you can go to a regional, upgrade faster, and be a captain. Which one?
Regional upgrade. They're looking for the PIC time.
Thank you. Okay. So FlexJet, NetJet, Gamma, Wheels Up, PlaneSense, great companies, cool jobs, and a nice little niche. But if you're trying to go to a legacy airline like American, Delta, United, Hawaiian, Alaska, it's better to go to an airline to begin with, right? 121 World, right?
That's a personal opinion as well. Some people go into those communities and they absolutely love it. I mean, they get airline tickets bought for them. They go fly somewhere. They stage. They love that. They fly around celebrities because celebrities don't, slum it with us, minions. So they'll go fly the FlexJet guys. It's a different lifestyle. So it depends on what lifestyle you want and if you upgrade. But the thing you got to remember is that you're upgrading on a little tiny jet. So you get PIC turbine jet time, but it's just a little tiny jet. It's not a 121 operation. You get what I mean?
Here's another question. You're going to like this one. So if you are a civilian pilot who's experienced, maybe even a captain at a regional, or if you were to get into the military as a civilian pilot or an enlisted or warrant officer pilot, should you go to the airline first and then go to UPT or, officers candidate school into military, commission flight school type thing? Or should you do that first and then go to the airlines?
That's a tough one. There's very few people that would fit into that category.
I've talked to a lot. I probably 4 or 5 dozen.
You're talking about somebody off the street that has all of their ratings and
Yeah.
has the experience, and they could go to an airline.
Yeah. Or they could even go to maybe join the Navy or the Marine Corps, the Air National Guard, Air Force Reserves. Should they go to Bogey Dope and try to go into Air National Guard now, or should they try to get to the airlines and then go to the Guard?
If they get hired by the airline, they would have to go out on military leave. I would definitely do it after you've been there a year, right, at the airlines, because you want to get off probation.
Right.
If you get hired by an airline and play the game, which I actually know a guy that did that.
Oh, I know a few.
He got hired at Northwest, and there was a 2-star general who got wind of what he did because all of a sudden he got hired, got off IOE, and then took mill leave to go over here and do this for 3 years. And that dude was a guard general who was a Northwest pilot. He got really pissed, and he made his life like a living hell, both within the military and then, when he got back to the airline. So you're kind of screwing your company over just to get that seniority number if you go in there and then pull chocks and get out.
Conversely, though, if you just go to your chief pilot and say, hey, I'm off probation, I'm doing the right things, I'd like to pursue this, do I have your support? You're not going to have a problem from your airline as long as you're up front with them, right?
No, I don't think you'd have an issue. I mean, manning is always an issue, but I think if you're off the year and you've proven yourself, first of all, honestly, you're up front with them, but they can't say no. They have to hold the job position for you because you're
USERA.
providing orders, right?
Right.
USERA takes care of you. But at the same time, you don't want to get in and then drop orders right away and go, hey, thanks so much, man, but I'm out of here.
Okay, I get it. So basically, being upfront, being honest, that's the main thing. What about
I would.
this?
And then after a year, then you could do your deal. But I would definitely be off probation a year, into the company before I left anywhere because, oh man, then you got to come back depending on how much you flew.
And you might be gone 2 years if you're going through UPT and OCS and all that stuff, and then your advanced aircraft training.
That's what I was saying. I only know a couple people that have done that. And the majority of people, if they have the hours, are just going to go to the airlines. They don't serve. The other route would be join a guard unit. That way you can fly full time until you have your hours to get on with an airline, and then you can back down off your commitment with the guard, kind of go back to a traditional reservist type deal.
Well, that's it for Make the Donuts, episode 1. Mitch Taco Bell, the indomitable host of Tall Tales with Taco. You need to check out this podcast. He's on YouTube and Facebook. Make sure you check him out and subscribe. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe here. We'll see you for the next episode coming soon. Thanks.